Get ready with me while I prepare to meet the son that I gave up for adoption for the very first time. I'm so incredibly nervous because this is huge. I never thought I would actually be able to meet him. When my son Jameson was about 1 year old, I got pregnant. And this is when I was still on drugs and things were bad. I had lost custody of Jameson and my life was in shambles. And you're probably gonna hate me for what I'm about to say next, but if it helps even one girl out there, then it's worth it. I could not stop using drugs. I tried so hard. I even went to the dope man and I told him, listen, I'm pregnant. I can't stop using. Please stop selling me drugs. The dope man was like, yeah, I got you, babe, I got you. And I would get a little bit of money and I would need something so bad. I'd be sick, withdrawing, and I'd go back to him and I'd say, please sell me something. And he would say, all right, baby girl, I got you. And like it wasn't his responsibility. I went to detox, I went to treatment. I was so scared for this child. And I hated myself because I was like, what the hell kind of mother does this? I didn't understand about the power of addiction at that time, and I just thought I was a horrible person, as many of you may consider me now. I finally came into the world. I've been using drugs for so long that something in my heart had just turned to ice, and when he was born, I didn't feel those motherly feelings that you have for your kid. I didn't have that. My heart was like a block of ice. For some reason, I didn't get arrested, although they did post a police officer right outside my door. I was so convinced that I'd be going to jail because when he was born, there were drugs in my system and his. Remember, a CPS worker came and she said, do you have a crib? And I said, no. And she said, do you have a car seat? And I said, no. She said, do you have baby food and formula and all the things that a baby would need? And I said, no. And she said, honey, you know you're not going to be able to take this baby home with you. And I said, yeah. When it came time to go, they let me leave, but they had to keep him. Arrangements were made for a cousin of mine to come and get him. And y'all, she dropped everything in her life and went to Walmart and bought everything you would need for a child. And she became his caregiver from the moment I asked her to. About 3 or 4 days later, I was back in the hospital because my boyfriend at the time had some kind of cyst or something and he needed to go have it lanced. And we were in the ER and we were waiting and it took forever. And I had the idea, I have a child upstairs, I'm gonna go see him. I got into the elevator and I remember pressing the button to go to like the baby floor, and like the elevator is kind of shiny and I could see my reflection. Hang on. I could see my reflection in the elevator and I just looked at myself and I didn't recognize myself. I was in a really violent relationship and my hair was just falling out in chunks and I had a broken, bruised jaw or something. I had bruises and dirty fingernails and I had on this giant plaid, kind of like a shacket thing, and old dirty jeans that were all wet and dirty on the ends. And I remember having the thought, like, who is this? And I went to where they keep the babies, and you know how you look through the glass and you can see them all lined up kind of facing the glass, and I looked over there and I was trying to find my baby and I found his name and he was swaddled up tight and sleeping so well. And I don't know what made me do this to this day. I believe it was my first experience with God, because I didn't feel feelings. I didn't have any feelings. I was cold, and yet for some reason I went to the nurse's station and I knocked on the door, and this super sweet nurse came out and she said, can I help you? And I said, yes ma'am, do you remember me? And she said, of course I remember you. And I said, is there any way I could see the baby? And her face kind of fell and she said, of course you can see the baby. And she took him and pushed him into this little room off to the side of the nursery. She cracked the door and she told me, you just take as much time as you need. And it was in that moment that all that ice that was frozen around my heart, it cracked open. I looked down at his little face and he was sleeping, and I started crying. These hot, silent tears, they just fell down my face because I knew that this wasn't me. I knew that I wasn't the type of person to do this, and I started telling him and apologizing to him and telling him, I'm so sorry that this has happened. And he started to wake up, and so I was like, I don't want to cause him any more discomfort than I already have. So I took off. I told the nurse, and I was like, I'm gonna go. He ended up getting adopted by this sweet family at my grandma's church. I never saw him again. You guys know my story. You know, I ended up going to prison for armed robbery. It was in prison that my life turned around. I found Jesus, and I started just pursuing a relationship with him with all my heart. And when I got out of prison, things went really well. I was able to regain custody of my first son, Jameson, when he was 7 years old, got a job, went back to school, just did all the things. But I prayed for that baby boy every single day. I prayed for him, and I was able to see that he was doing well. He went to a church that wasn't too far away from like where I lived, and every once in a while in a small town, I would see him like at Walmart with his mom, and I knew he was good, and I knew that it was none of my business to try to introduce myself or interfere in any way. I will tell this story. When me and my son were at the Relay for Life one year, when Jameson was probably like 8 or 9, and he was there with his family in his church, and I remember just grabbing Jameson's hand. We were in line for some french fries, and I grabbed his hand, and I was like, there's your brother. And Jameson kind of freezes, and he looks, and we're both just staring at this kid like creepers. And all of a sudden, this music comes over the loudspeakers, and my son, he starts dancing, and he's like doing a little jig, and he's moving and dancing and smiling and laughing. And it was just like it was in slow-mo for me, because I just felt the Holy Spirit say, see, he's okay. He's dancing. And I had peace. Fast forward to right before the Taylor Swift concert, me and Jameson were celebrating the day that he came back to live with me, and we were going to see Taylor Swift in Atlanta. And we were both so excited. It was on a Thursday night that we were getting ready for the next day. And he needed some things for his outfit. I needed some things. We went to this one Walmart, and because there's 2 Walmarts in my town, went to this one Walmart. The stuff that we wanted wasn't there, so we came home. And we were just like, he got a bite to eat, and I was like packing some things, and we were like, well, we still need these last 2 things, so we have to go to Walmart. So at 10 o'clock at night, it's pouring down rain. We make our way to the other Walmart across town, and I'm in like the women's clothing section, and he went to go look at like the makeup, and he came back to me, and as he was walking over to me, this little girl comes after Jameson, and she's like, excuse me, what's your name? And Jameson was like, Jameson? Like, do I know you? And when I say little girl, she was like 18. And then she goes, no, but you look like him. And she turns and she points behind her, and there is standing my son that I gave up for adoption. And she goes, that's your brother. I know this is kind of a cliffhanger. Go to the next video. I've run out of time.